I wrote the letter in October, at the kitchen table with a lamp that needed oil and a pen I had to coax 3 times before it bled ink. 12 lines. Counted them after. I was not a man who wasted words then, and I am not one now. But I'll admit those 12 lines took me the better part of an evening to get right. Because I kept writing things I didn't mean and crossing them out. And what I finally sent said almost nothing at all. It said, I am Emmett Voss. I run the Harrow Creek cattle operation. I require a capable woman to keep the house through the winter months. I am not a difficult man. The arrangement would be formal and mutual. If she found it unsuitable, she was free to say so, and I would see her back to whatever town she came from at my expense. It said near the bottom, I am a widower. As if that explained everything. I suppose it did. Adelaide Crane stepped off the noon stage on a Thursday in early November. I had expected, I don't know what I had expected, something harder maybe. Someone who looked as practical as the letter. She was slight, with dark eyes that moved over the valley like she was already memorizing it. She carried one trunk and a canvas bag with a book sticking out the top. She shook my hand before I could tip my hat. Firm grip, she said. Mr. Voss. The valley's prettier than I thought it would be. Not a question, not a complaint, just a fact she was handing me. I said, it's harder in winter, she said. Most things worth keeping are. I didn't answer that. I loaded her trunk into the wagon, and we rode the 6 miles to Harrow Creek in near silence, which suited me fine. The arrangement was clear from the first night. She took the second room. She cooked, kept the house, and managed the supply ledger. She had a sharper hand for numbers than I did, which I found out when she reorganized the store shelf in the first week and corrected 3 months of my accounts without being asked. I ran the cattle and the hands. We said good morning and good evening. On Sundays we ate at the same table without much talk. It was, as I had promised, a formal and mutual arrangement, and I told myself I preferred it that way. What I had not accounted for was the book. She read every evening by the fire. Sometimes she laughed at something on the page, a small sound, quickly covered, as if she wasn't sure she had the right. Once I asked her what was funny. She looked up like I'd surprised her, then read me a passage aloud. Something dry and exact about a man who believed himself dignified and was, in fact, only afraid. I didn't laugh, but I thought about it for 3 days. After that, she started leaving books on the kitchen table. Not pushed toward me, just left there, open, the way you might leave a window unlocked. I didn't pick them up. Then one morning I did, just to move it, and read 4 pages standing at the counter before I put it down. Winter came hard in December. A norther pushed in off the high range and kept us inside for 11 days. The hands bunked in the near barn. Adelaide and I were, for the most part, alone in the house. She didn't seem afraid of the quiet, which I had found most people were. She brought her sewing to the main room, and I brought the ledgers, and we worked on opposite sides of the fire, like 2 people who had agreed to share a lamp. On the 4th night, she asked me what my wife's name had been. I set down my pen. Nobody had asked me that in 2 years. People in Harrow Creek had learned not to. Clara, I said, was she good with the cold? Better than me, I said. She liked it. Said it made the stars look closer. Adelaide looked at the window, where the frost had crept up the lower pane. She was right, she said, and went back to her sewing. I don't know what I had expected her to say. Something soft or sorry. She said the true thing instead, and left Clara's memory sitting there in the room. Not like a wound, but like something that belonged. I hadn't felt that before. I hadn't let anyone close enough. By January I was reading. Nothing dramatic. The books she left in the evenings when the work was done. She never mentioned it. But one morning she came in from the porch, with snow on her coat, and found me 20 pages deep in something, and said nothing, except to set a cup of coffee beside me, which I thought was generous. One evening, I came in late from the north pasture to find her standing on the porch in the cold, head tilted back, looking up. I came up beside her without thinking. The sky was ridiculous that night. Every star out and hard as cut glass. I've been looking at that sky for 15 years, I said. I stopped seeing it somewhere around year 3. What made you stop? I thought about it. Got busy. I stopped. Small, I said finally. I got small. She turned and looked at me in a way that wasn't pity and wasn't judgment. You don't seem small to me, Mr. Voss. Emmett, I said. It was the first time I'd offered it. Emmett, she said, like she was testing the weight of it. Then she went back to looking at the stars. I stood there beside her for a long time. The cold didn't bother me the way it usually did. In February, one of the young hands, a boy named Cord, his arm on the ice near the water trough. Adelaide said it herself. Steady hands. No fuss. Then sat with him. Until the color came back to his face, talking about nothing in particular so he wouldn't dwell on the pain. I watched from the doorway. The boy would have followed her anywhere after that. So would I, if I was being honest, though I wasn't ready to say so. March came in like something undecided. The freeze broke slow and the mud season was hard on the cattle. I was short-tempered and tired, and one evening I was sharper with her than I had any right to be. Said something curt about supper being late, which was my fault, not hers. She didn't flinch and she didn't argue. She set the plate in front of me and said, "Eat first. The world's always worse on an empty stomach." I ate. And then I said, "I'm sorry, that was uncalled for." She looked at me across the table. "Yes," she said, "but you said so. That counts for something." I had been married before, and I knew how to live beside a person. What I had forgotten, or what I had decided wasn't available to me anymore, was how to live toward one. There's a difference, I understand it now. Living beside a person, you share the load and keep the accounts and get through the winters. Living toward one, you find yourself thinking about what she'll say, about the hawk you saw on the fence post, whether she's seen the first mud hen on the creek, whether the coffee is hot when she wakes up. You start taking stock of things again. You start noticing the sky. It was the second week of April when I found her in the side yard with a handful of early wildflowers she'd brought up from along the creek. Just a clutch of small yellow things, nothing remarkable. But she was looking at them like they were something rare. I had been carrying a thing for 2 weeks and hadn't known how to set it down, I said. The arrangement. I'd like to change the terms. She looked up. The formal and mutual part, I said. I'd like it to be something else, if that suits you. I was not, as I said, a man who wasted words. But I had too few of them right then, and the ones I did have were not quite enough. So I said, "You've been good for this place. You've been good for me." I didn't know I needed either of those things, and I was wrong. And I think you might already know that. I wanted to say it out loud. She was quiet for long enough that I thought I'd made a mistake. Then she said, "I was hoping you'd get there before summer." She reached out and put the wildflowers in my hand. I looked at them a moment, those small yellow things, and thought that Clara had been right. The stars did look closer in the cold, and I thought that Adelaide had given them back to me, along with everything else I hadn't known I was missing. We married properly that May, front of the hands and the preacher from Delton. And what I remember most is not the words, but the way she looked at Harrow Creek afterward. Like she had already known it was hers and was only just letting herself say so. I had written 12 lines in October that said almost nothing. They started, I couldn't have put in 100 pages. But she knew. She had always known. She just waited for me to catch up.